Hello, my name is Lucas, this is a bit of lit, and I'm here to do the Western Canon book tag, original to Aaron Facer, which is making the rounds on BookTube, as you well know. I thought I would join in on the fun, so here I am. And, yeah, it's got a lot of great questions. Actually, it's only got 3 questions, and they're all great. If you could choose 20 books to represent your reading of Western literature, how would you choose them? And what would you look for? Well, based on what I've read, first of all, I would choose books based on if I enjoyed it or not. I picked quite a few based, all of them based on if I enjoy it. But some of them I picked based on maybe like cultural importance, so to speak, or at least thematically speaking, it is culturally important in some way to Western culture throughout the years. Or, more importantly, what a lot of these are for is how critical the book is about the part of the West that these people are from, or if it's critical of the entire West, so to speak. Or just if I think it's a great book that really helps you try to work things out and think. Anyway, those are some of my criteria, and hopefully that will be clear when I tell you what exactly I mean, if not by my words, then by my examples. What I mean is that after choosing your 20 books, what blind spots have you noticed? I've got a whole lot of men. I did add women where I thought it was necessary. Largely American, too, not entirely. Just a few that are not from English. Any other, I guess those are not really blind spots. Those are known weaknesses. I don't know what blind spots I have. But yeah, I guess maybe 2 books kind of cover the same theme now that I look at it. But one is nonfiction and a real testament of a real person. Because that's another thing. I don't really have a lot of nonfiction on here. And I think there should be more. Nor do I have a lot of poetry. But you gotta pick and choose, I suppose. And that's what I did. So, number 3, what 20 books would you choose to represent your reading of Western literature? I didn't put these in any order except basically which 20 came to me first. The first one I put is the Journal of Christopher Columbus, or whatever the name of it is. Not because I think Christopher Columbus is some great guy, obviously. He is a monster. But I think it's sort of a good book to read, to kind of see what were people thinking, or what was Christopher Columbus thinking of the New World, and what were they up to. And all of that is evil, but I thought it would be something that should be in there for the Western canon as something important. As repugnant and repellent and vile as Christopher Columbus is, yeah. That was my choice. We're off with a banger already. Homer's Odyssey. I was between the Odyssey and the Iliad because I wanted to pick a lot of books that show the violence of humanity and the West. The Odyssey certainly has that at the end, and it is excellent. But I've never read the Iliad, so I couldn't pick it. Even though that one is specifically about war. Yeah, the Odyssey is, either way, an incredible story. It sort of has a hero's journey kind of thing going. Lots of really great fun, lots of really interesting elements to the culture of Greece of the time. And yeah, certainly a lot of the tropes, so to speak, or ideas from the Odyssey have passed through the generations. I mean, it's remembered all these years for good reason. It's a great story. And yeah, I love reading different translations. Number 3, Paradise Lost by John Milton. I would have put the Bible, but I haven't read the Bible in such a long time. But I wanted to pick something that represents the importance of Christianity to Western culture, for good or for ill, mostly, largely, almost entirely for ill. That is also really incredible, and a poem, and it's really powerful in getting you to sympathize with Satan and sort of see his point of view, and ultimately see that he's wrong and terrible and all that. But yeah, Paradise Lost is one of my favorite works. I think it's incredible. Misogynistic, sure, but still incredible. My next one was War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, because it is the most incredible FU to somebody ever. It is about the Napoleonic Wars, and it is a book, from my understanding, to just thrash the idea that a single man has significant impact on the course of history, when it is, in fact, the people, collectively, and that kind of thing. It's not just some big figurehead that everyone sort of revolves around, like Napoleon, for example. And I love it for that. And it also, again, shows the violence of the West. Not to say that other places have not had violence. Surely the whole human race is extremely violent throughout history, but that was part of the criteria. Moving on to my next pick, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs. I wanted to pick something that shows sort of what's going a bit further on in time. A few hundred years after Christopher Columbus, what is now happening in the Americas, in North America, and in the United States of America, where Harriet Jacobs was a slave who ran away and faced impossible odds, and is, quite frankly, one of the bravest people, one of many, but one of the bravest people, for the simple fact that she was writing as a runaway, as a slave, who also ran away when, all this was incredibly dangerous for her. Yeah, it shows the inhumanities of America of the time, and the indignities and iniquities that Harriet had to face. Has an incredible moment where she's hiding, like, kind of above the roof, below the ceiling, but it's not, it's like kind of an attic, it's like a crawl space, something, and she's just watching the outside to, like, keep an eye on her kids and that kind of thing. I mean, that affects me to this day, to try to put myself in that space, I suppose. Yeah, great book, great retelling of her, this moment, these incidents in her life, but yeah, very heavy. Number 9, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, sort of showing the after effects of World War One, and it's just incredible. I mean, Mrs. Dalloway, the way the point of view just smoothly, seamlessly transitions and goes around, and just shows the day of one woman's life. yeah, I really love that book. I think it's incredible. The first time I read it, I didn't really understand it at all. And then the second time I read it, oh my gosh, I loved it. I saw the genius of it. Number 10, one of my favorite books of all time, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I feel like you have to put Dickens in. One, because I have mixed feelings on him, but I think Great Expectations is, from the books I've read, his best. Because his stories and just caught on fire as they were being serialized and brought some legitimacy to long-form fiction, whereas I believe in his time, or a little bit before his time, poetry was the respected gentleman's form of literature. If you believe anything William Wordsworth has to say, his book is up there. You can't really see it. It's one of these blue ones right there, I think. You can't really tell, but yeah, I think there was a conglomeration of things coming together to work perfectly, and it was just like the perfect storm for Charles Dickens to become incredibly successful. And he wrote captivating stories, so it makes sense that people would buy in to what he's writing and want to hear what he's writing and that kind of stuff. But Great Expectations, an incredible story of this young boy that has great expectations for his life and thinks that he deserves more. And I think another reason for picking this is sort of the self-entitlement, the extreme self-entitlement of Pip is my representation of the self-entitlement of the West. My next pick is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I picked this because it's a phenomenal book. Maybe I should have picked Parable of the Sower or something, or the one that's like set in the 2020s and is like a dystopian fiction where there's climate change and all that horrible stuff. But I haven't read that one. I've read Kindred. I think she's a brilliant writer. She's one of my favorites. I mean, I think she's a bona fide, hardworking. It's not natural. I mean, I think there's a bit of natural talent, but I know it's not just like, it just comes from nowhere. But I think she's a hardworking genius, is what I'm trying to say. Kindred is so affecting. I mean, it really goes deep, using fiction to show where slave stereotypes come from and manifest, and how why people acted these ways and how these stereotypes could come about, and this kind of thing. It also shows the cruelties of slavery and this kind of thing. Yeah, I was between this and Beloved by Toni Morrison, though now I realize I have two things covering the same kind of subject. Maybe I could have picked a different book, but either way, Kindred, great science fiction as well. The time travel in it, not explained, and that is one of the best parts of it. My next pick would be Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron, which I have up there. I picked it because it's sort of a story of these nobles from Florence, Italy, I think, who just go out and are trying to stay out of the city and be in the countryside to avoid the Black Death, the Black Plague. And they tell a whole bunch of stories, and a lot of them are really amusing. But I think that format is quite special and unique, especially for its time, hundreds of years ago. And I think it had a great impact as well. So that's kind of another reason why I picked The Decameron. It's also, I mean, it's a great read too. A lot of the stories are really fun. And then, some of them not so much. But there's 100 different stories. You can pick and choose the ones you like. And then I picked another Russian novel, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky, to pick a really great book that gets into morality and the concepts of crime and punishment and what these mean, and and this kind of thing. I think it's quite an interesting book. Fyodor Dostoyevsky is one of the funniest books I've ever read. When the guy when the guy comes back after murdering someone in the middle of the night with crazed eyes and is wondering what people are doing in the house. Oh man, that is I was cackling all day. I'm still cackling. The Plague by Albert Camus is my next pick. Whoa! I read that right after the George Floyd riots began, and that novel, although it is about a plague, which same year COVID is happening, right? Beginning, and seemingly will never go away. But although it is about a plague and how it's affecting society and the institutions we have around us are failing us and falling apart, it has this really hopeful message of like, you need to stand up and fight for what's right and this kind of thing. And reading that right as that movement was happening was really powerful, especially because this was written around the time of World War II, and it was very obviously a kind of allegory for the Nazi regime and pushing back against fascists, which is ever present in modern day, unfortunately. But yeah, really incredible book. Definitely my favorite of his that I've read. Far better than The Stranger, although The Stranger is also like really funny. When he's in jail and the lawyer won't shake his hand and he's like, oh yeah, I killed somebody. That's why he doesn't want to shake my hand. That's so funny. To have a little bit more poetry, I picked William Butler Yeats, phenomenal poet. It's been a while since I've read something of his, but I always feel quite moved by his work, and I think throughout his whole career he was very good. Next, F. Scott Fitzgerald's is The Great Gatsby. I know generally people love it, although there's a lot of pushback. Maybe it's not the best book to read in your teenage years, by a teacher forcing you for the curriculum and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it has a lot to say about the joke that is the American dream. And how, the rich perceive newfound wealth, so to speak. The old riches perceive the new riches, or just anybody that they consider beneath them and that kind of thing, and how they want to crush people. And it's been a really long time since I've read the novel. So I don't remember everything, but yeah, I just think it's a great novel about the impossibility of the American dream, and yeah. Anyway, my next pick is The Word for World is Forest by Ursula K. LeGuin. Okay, I believe this is the last woman on my list, unfortunately. The Word for World is Forest is a phenomenal, I don't know if it's a novella or a novel, but it is a phenomenal work about the Vietnam War and about imperialism and how this affects people's cultures, even if in their culture they're nonviolent, and this kind of thing, and just how damaging senseless wars can be, and stuff like that, and how damaging imperialism can be. Yeah, great novel. Science fiction as well. We got one more, or two more, I guess. Next one is Alan Moore's Watchmen. I really like these very critical kind of stories. these story of these superheroes, or former superheroes, I guess, and a conspiracy brought about by the smartest man in the world to try to bring about world peace permanently due to the heating up of the Cold War, if I remember. It's been a long time since I read the graphic novel, but yeah, Watchmen is just, that's just on the surface. There's a lot of really interesting complexities about like who superheroes really are, and that kind of stuff. Really great. My next choice is Frog and Toad by Arnold Lobel, which is a children's book. And I think that children's literature should be represented, especially, because I work with children a lot. And I see the joy that they give from the books that they read. And I've read lots of Frog and Toad books with my students, and or talked to my students about the Frog and Toad books and read a few of them because they loved them so much. And I love those books too. And yeah, Frog and Toad, great friends, really heartwarming. Yeah, I just love it. It's really sweet. And I guess it's kind of a metaphor for like the two different sides of the author, but also because he was gay. It's sort of a, yeah, the Frog and Toad are sort of a representation of two male friends. Nothing more than that, but just the closeness that men can have together, male animals can have together. Very sweet. My last piece of science fiction would be Frank Herbert's Dune. Absolutely tearing down the hero's journey as we've seen in the Odyssey, and seeing the dangers of following a kind of messiah figure as we get through Christianity, or somebody who aligns themselves in the way where they are the one with the answers and the kind of person you should follow, and that kind of thing. Incredible story. Great allegory about, spice melange being oil and all that stuff. Very complex, ecological, political, whatever, sociological work. Absolutely amazing. I'm currently reading, you can see I've got two other Dune books there. I'm currently reading God, Emperor of Dune, number 4. Really good so far. Yeah. My next piece would be Fictions by Jorge Luis Borges. Gotta get some South America in there. I guess they're part of the global South. Maybe that's not the West, but I don't know. He's from Argentina, and that's full of European people. So I think it's like the whitest country in the Americas. So because they have so many European people, or ancestral European people. Anyway, Jorge Luis Borges is just a mind-bending author. I mean, each of his stories, it doesn't matter how short they are, they'll just like, this man is, I know he read a lot and was really smart, but I mean, this guy's a genius. The things he writes about are just, what? Really something to chew on and gnaw at and think about a lot. So, and I mean, he's got like a story about somebody rewriting word for word Miguel Cervantes's Don Quixote, and the response to that as it being genius and that kind of thing, and giving you reasons to think about that. And this brilliant author. My 19th pick is A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. I wanted to have a piece of history represented here. Yeah, very socialist, extremely critical of American empire throughout history, showing the real history of America. I love the book. I think it's great. I certainly have a lot of issues with Howard Zinn's approach. A lot of his quotes that he took, there's an incredible amount of ellipses, which makes me wonder what he left out. And if he didn't leave that out, would I still be getting the same message from what he's saying? Maybe not. Probably not, actually. Also, yeah, sometimes it's kind of like he's using secondary sources to write about history rather than primary sources. But at the same time, I don't know, I think just because it's so well written and really challenges you to think about what you've learned and you know, even whether or not Howard Zinn is being honest in what he's saying, it's valuable. And in a way, like, I can forgive the secondary sources, to be honest, because in a way it almost, maybe because I just like don't have a lot of respect for the way history is taught in America. But like when I read it a while back, I was thinking like, okay, yes, I have problems with it, but it almost feels like this is what history is actually like. Like this is the first actual history book I've ever read. That's not true. And it, again, has its problems. But it is worth reading, and it's worth considering and challenging yourself with. So I would put it there on the Western canon. But that is kind of specifically for America, like I said. But even then, like, you know, I've met a lot of people that are not from America who have a more negative view of America than Americans, but not necessarily, like, still kind of, like, see America as, like, the world leaders. I also have met a tremendous amount of non-Americans who, yeah, kind of feel like me. So, I mean, I've met a mix, but even then, maybe this is more a specific American Western canon. My final one, another American book, my favorite book of all time, Herman Melville's Moby Dick, Where I Get the Name Strike the Sun, MD. I'd strike the sun if it insulted me, says Captain Ahab in Moby Dick, MD. I think it's great about, showing the history of whaling, I guess. Also, a violent history of America in its own way. The violence, the megalomaniac aspect. There's this interesting thing where I think the people left on the ship at the very end, right before the Pequod is destroyed, the amount of people on the ship is how many states there were in America at the time. I think, there's probably some correlation there. Incredibly introspective, brilliant novel, and I love it. That's been 28 minutes and 45 seconds of me talking. I've got nothing else to say. Thank you, goodbye.